sometimes like, I don't have enough time to work out. And I'm like, okay, I do have enough time. I just don't prioritize that time because I could come in. There's plenty of times, as you know, throughout my day that if I wanted to get a workout in, I could. But we rationalize and put blame in other areas and other aspects because we don't want to take that upon ourselves.
And that actually came up. So they interviewed like a mess of people. I didn't write these numbers down, but a mess of people, and were like, if we gave you 4 extra hours in a day, would you use any of that time to actually work out? And not one person said yes. Even though the logic is like, I can't work out because I don't have time. They're always like, I'd probably fill it with something else.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Healthy Living Wichita podcast with Go Time Training. I'm your host, Raymond Elliott, lead personal trainer at Go Time Training in Northeast Wichita, Kansas. I've been in the fitness industry for over 20 years now, and I've seen it all. This podcast cuts through all the fads and gimmicks to give you a science-based truth on all things fitness and nutrition, so you don't have to try to figure it out on your own. If you want to live happier and healthier and get the scoop on how to work out, eat right, and keep a positive mindset, you're in the right place. It's go time. Now, let's get to the show. Healthy Living Wichita. Right?
Yep.
Yes, I got it right. I'm getting good at these. This has been
like
pretty awesome.
Pro.
Okay, so we're here today. We're with our amazing special guest here, Anjelica, also known as Jelly.
Probably more commonly known at this point.
Yes, probably. Yes, Jelly, yes. So Jelly's in the house. Jelly, you want to say a little bit about yourself?
I am me. And I have the same name as Anjelica from Hamilton, which everybody knows at this point. So I've made a lot of friends that way.
Nice.
But no, I'm super excited to do this podcast because we're going to talk about the convention I went to virtually last week, which was super weird. So that's kind of awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really cool. So for the viewers that might not know, like we do constant development around here. Obviously, that's part of kind of your development. We do like a yearly, but of course we do like monthly. And we also, in our team meetings, we present different topics of things that we went over just to educate each other. And then also as a teacher, you have to learn those things yourself. So our last Tuesday meeting, you discussed a lot of things that you learned from the Idea World Conference. Trying to make sure I get that right.
So many words.
Which was awesome. And we appreciate you doing that and sharing your knowledge with all of us. But I thought, man, that'd be great to share because a lot of it had a lot to do with personal training, client interactions and helping them motivate and, things that we need to learn ourselves. Because that's probably, I think the exercise science and those things, those are very important. But really, I think, and you can probably attest to this, as we become trainers, really the interactions with people and how to help motivate and keep accountable and do the right things is probably the hardest part. And you don't really learn that much of that in a book.
It would be really hard to, but that personal connection and stuff is probably the most important part.
Yeah. So if you want to, this is you're the one that has all this knowledge. So if you kind of want to, share a little bit of what you learned or how that could help people or help fellow trainers out there. I'm sure there's other coaches. There should be watching and learning.
If you can see, I have notes. That's who I am as a person.
She created like a 20-page
I
book.
did. It's front and back because I'm that extra. You might hear it. Notes.
You're always amazing on that.
Shucks. So the class I took was called Blame, Bam, Retraining Client Thinking. So I wanted to ask you, you've been in the game for a while, what are some reasons that clients give about why they can't come in and train or do it consistently, that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, the number one reason I always get is time, right? A lot of times we either have busy parents, and so there's all these different sporting events, hockey, or not hockey, there's no hockey, but...
sometimes there's hockey.
There's hockey, but volleyball, soccer, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. There's those things that always come into place, or work. So time is normally one of the biggest problems that we see with a lot of people. There's also sometimes aches and pains. So sometimes people complain about different injuries that they have. There is those are the big ones. Those are probably the two biggest ones that I could think of at the top of my head. But there's a few different reasons why people don't. But those are probably the biggest ones. Time, I think, is always the big one that we always see. So
I like the irony of the aches and pains because it's like if they work out, they wouldn't have those aches and pains specifically. So
yeah, they always say if you have an injury, you shouldn't run from a personal trainer. You should run to a trainer.
Right.
Unless you have a knee injury, then you should probably walk.
You should probably walk carefully and on even
Where's my
flat wheel.
I need my buttons.
Oh, you need a soundboard. That would be amazing.
There you go.
But yeah, that's totally all the kind of reasons. And he gave even the presenter, his name was Rick Ritchie, which was hilarious because it sounds fake. But he gave those examples and a whole bunch more, but those were the biggest ones. So there was this study that he and there was like 4 other people. Their names weren't as fun, but they did a whole study with 46 sedentary adults over 65 years old. So these people didn't really do anything except like work, go home, that kind of thing. Activities of daily living, so sedentary. But they gave them a pedometer before the study, and then after 2 weeks of doing this study, which came in with attributional retraining, which is what we're going to talk about today. Fancy words.
I like that.
They actually increased their steps by 24% over those 2 weeks, which is actually equivalent to 2.5 miles.
Wow.
In 2 weeks, that's so much. Which was cool because it improved their mental health related quality of life, which they did by a survey and stuff. And then they also reported less difficulty with, again, those activities of daily living. Because something you say all the time is like, motion is lotion. Like, a body in motion is going to keep on moving.
Right,
so,
yes.
That's pretty cool. And more than half of the participants reported an improvement in pain and energy levels and sleep quality, which is awesome.
Yeah, those are good things.
Those are all good things.
Yeah.
Sleep is a struggle. I know that's a thing. So anyway, according to Rick Ritchie, the attributional retraining is basically clients and trainers like really actually having a conversation about what these barriers actually look like.
Right.
Because I don't know about you, but if somebody says that they don't have time, in my head I'm like, well, we have the same 24 hours in the day.
Right, yeah.
How do I have time but you don't have time?
Right.
Like, not trying to be rude about it, but I'm still like, that's my thought process. So
I think a lot of us do that, as well. So
not even on purpose, but it's one of those things. So I have to hold myself accountable and be like, okay, don't think as a trainer, put yourself in this person's shoes. And so we create this conversation using 4 really cool, very specific steps, which is kind of what we'll talk about today, of how to have that conversation.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. I mean, I think that's really good. So yeah.
Yeah, in general, there was a quote that says, individuals attribute their perceived reasons for failing to exercise regularly toward external causes to protect their own egos and feel better about themselves.
Right.
So they don't want to blame themselves. They don't want to be like, I don't want to work out. I'm afraid. So they'll be like, I don't have time. It's work, that kind of thing. So they shove it away, which I feel like a lot of us can probably relate to.
Well, most of us don't ever want to take blame. Even the brain doesn't like want to take ownership of things or doesn't want to be wrong, into the fact where there's showing that people even make imagine events in their head to justify their thoughts. So rationalization is one of the biggest ones, and I do it all the time. And I think the more that you start to learn to hear it, the more you start to see yourself doing it. Even with time, sometimes like I don't have enough time to work out, and I'm like, okay, I do have enough time. I just don't prioritize that time because I could come in. There's plenty of times, as you know, throughout my day that if I wanted to get a workout in, I could. But we rationalize and put blame in other areas and other aspects because we don't want to take that upon ourselves.
And that actually came up. So they interviewed like a mess of people. I didn't write these numbers down, but a mess of people, and were like, if we gave you 4 extra hours in a day, would you use any of that time to actually work out? And not one person said yes. Even though the logic is like, I can't work out because I don't have time. They're always like, I'd probably fill it with something else. Like,
we admit that people are busy. We know we work with a lot of busy professionals, either parents. We have people that are, parents and busy professionals at the same time, which is double duty. So we definitely understand that. But still, it's like there is that ability if we can find that out and figure it out. And it just depends if it's a priority, I think. But you're going to.
And this whole thing is us talking about how we can work together to work through some of those barriers. So step 1 is called causal search activation, which is a fancy way. I
like that.
I know.
Can you say it again?
Causal search activation. That's
activation.
All I got.
Okay.
That's twice.
Got it.
So basically, it's a conversation where the trainer asks the client what they feel like their reasons are for not being able to see results or come in consistently, which is kind of like where we'd come up with the time and just not making it a priority and that kind of thing. And so as a trainer and client work together to figure out if this is something that we have to work around or can work through. So more in that, but think that first. Like, all of these reasons that you're giving, is it something you can work around or work through, or is it an actual problem?
Right,
Those
yeah.
are only 3 options, just 3 of them. The step 2 is also fancy, attributional induction stage. I'm only going to say that one once, just kidding. Attributional induction stage.
There you go.
I did it.
Excellent.
So this is where we figure out 3 different things. So the first one is whether or not this obstacle is internal or external, which we actually talk about a lot with motivation.
Right.
If it's intrinsic or extrinsic. And
Right.
so that's an important thing. So is this something the client specifically needs to work through personally, or is it something that the trainer is able to help with? So like for an internal thing, like that you're self-conscious to be at the gym. That's an internal thing. And for the most part, the trainer can be like, you're fine. We can make time where you're not going to work out around a lot of people or that kind of thing. But it's really an internal deal. Have you ever had that? That'd be tough. Where someone's like, I'm too shy to come in and work out.
I think people, sometimes people will literally utilize trainers because they're too shy to go to like a big box gym at first. But yeah, I think people have that confidence. I think that's a very difficult thing. I think, I hate to always, pat us on the back because really the podcast now is all about go time. It's really just about helping people. But I think that's one benefit here is because we have a lot of people that are in the same state, in the same mind. We don't have kind of the big gyms where they could be a little bit more intimidating with some of the people that go there. So I think we kind of end up getting more people that may be more self-conscious somewhere else training here because of that. But yeah, I think that helps. I think the way that you perceive yourself, your own abilities, the way that you feel about yourself has a lot to do with going to the gym or not going to the gym.
Totally.
Which sadly, a lot of times, sometimes the people that feel that way probably are the people that need to go to the gym because it can help build their confidence and make them feel better. So.
Right. It's true.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that you're trying to figure out. Is this obstacle an internal or an external obstacle? Step 2, is this obstacle stable or unstable? So is it going to stay the same, like there's no chance of it changing, or is it something that over time could change? So it's like people always refer to this as my busy season, or like when school's getting started, that's very stressful, especially right now, I get that. Or sometimes in different parts of work, you have a busier time, tax time for tax people. I don't know why that was my first thought.
Yeah.
But basically, we would, as trainers, understand that and take that to mean that, like, right now, maybe this isn't when we're going to try and put on a bunch of weight and not try and, like, hit personal records, but just try and establish any type of routine. Like, we're going to be as flexible as we can, maybe even be willing to shorten our sessions and do 30-minute sessions, 45-minute sessions, or be willing to do, like, our virtual options, which we've just started being able to work through. And so it's flexibility on our part. So
be adaptive and be able to just something to keep them consistent, but it might not be the same as before because of time constraints and stress.
Exactly. So step 2 is it stable or unstable? And the final one is kind of tricky because is it controllable or uncontrollable, which is sort of self-explanatory, and it goes back to what step 1 of if this is something you could work through or around. So if I'll get more into that one because it's kind of hard to like exemplify without giving it away. But so you have to go through those 3 things first. So there's actually a couple scenarios that I took from the class. There's only 2, so it won't take very long. But to walk through, trainers and clients can go through together and kind of look at how it breaks down. So the first one is a man works in finance and entertains clients 2 to 3 nights per week. And he travels a lot for business, and his schedule leads to drinking too much, eating poorly, and doesn't allow him very much time to exercise. So we would work together to decide, first of all, is this an internal or an external problem?
Right.
So the answer was, well, what do you think it is? Do you think it's more internal or external?
I think it's probably more internal problem in that aspect. It's obviously something that he's feeling about himself that's leading to those decisions.
That's totally what I thought too. And I was like, well, he eats poorly because he's tired, and that's an internal thing. But really, it ended up being external because technically, work isn't within your realm of control.
That's true,
like,
right? Yeah.
You can't decide. Well, you have to travel for work. Well, you took that job, so that's out of your control, kind of, sort of. Unless you're not going to take that job, but probably don't do that. So the first one, it is external. So that was kind of tricky. But stable or unstable. So is there any chance of this changing?
Well, if his work is consistent, he's always having travel, then that would be a stable thing, so you wouldn't be able to change that.
Stable, whoop whoop, unless you quit your job. But again, don't do that. Unless you are unhappy, but that's a different topic. And the last one is controllable or uncontrollable. that one was hard.
Well, I mean, if he has to travel, then that's probably uncontrollable because that's part of his job. So I would say that was an uncontrollable thing.
Plot twist. It's controllable because just because he's traveling doesn't mean he has to eat at fast food restaurants.
Right. He can control what he does. He can't control the travel, but he can control what he does on the travel.
Exactly. So not controlling the travel, that's what makes it external.
Right.
And then it's controllable because you have control over yourself while you're traveling. So I was like...
Right.
Because I hear that a lot when people are... I was like, oh, I understand. You didn't have options. You do, though. Like, if you really, really look everywhere.
I just kind of talked through that with a nutrition kind of client today, or going through those things, and she was just talking about luncheons.
Yeah.
She does lots of luncheons, and she does lots of conferences, and are always bringing in food, and so that's been a struggle because there's all this food involved, so she's having to like bring her own food or lower her portion, so she's having to make that controllable. She can't control them bringing in food and luncheons because she has to go to those meetings, but she can control what she eats during those times.
That's exactly right.
Bam.
So you totally jumped way ahead and like you already had a game plan, which is awesome. That's step 3. We'll get there. So the second example is a 67-year-old male who likes to play golf. His physician told him, I hit the table. That was loud probably.
Right.
His physician told him to start exercising to manage his blood pressure and help his weight, but he doesn't live near a fitness facility, which we know is a huge thing.
Yeah, we see that actually within 5 minutes, either to and from work or within a fitness facility, they've shown people have a lot more difficult with adherence.
Right. So this one, is it internal or external? This one is actually external because it's his doctor telling him to exercise. He's not deciding on it.
Right.
So you would have known that, but I totally jumped again. I got excited.
That's fine. I like it.
So is it stable or unstable?
Unstable? Stable?
It's stable!
Okay.
You got my blink. That was perfect. It's
Good.
stable because he can't really move out of his house to move closer to a fitness place.
That's true.
Which is kind of like, I feel like digging, but that's not the point. And his health isn't going to change if he doesn't do anything.
Right.
Except get worse. Meh. And then the last one is controllable or uncontrollable.
Well, it would be uncontrollable because he can't, once again, kind of change where he lives at, so he's stuck in that position, right?
Exactly. Ding, ding, ding. We do need a soundboard.
I know.
I'm going to invent it. Andrea? No.
Andrea?
But so it is uncontrollable, but it's also like something that we as trainers could help him understand, that he doesn't have to live near a fitness facility to work out.
Right, to engage in physical activity.
Exactly. What was that again? Because you said it really fast.
Engage in physical activity.
Physical activity, which you can do on a golf course by walking instead of riding in a golf cart, or walk around before your holes start, that kind of thing. Your holes, game? Is it a match?
We've established earlier.
I really don't know anything about golf.
That's fine though.
Not even a little bit.
That's good.
Putt
That's all right.
is where I live. So that was step 2. So step 1 was working through like what your excuses are. Step 2 is it internal, external, stable or unstable, and controllable or uncontrollable. Step 3 is taking all of that and consolidating it. It's called the consolidation phase.
Makes sense.
Which is where you already were, where you were like, okay, here's what you do have. You do travel a lot. You do, or your client, they do bring in food.
Right,
but you have control. You don't have to eat everything on the table. You don't have to partake at all. You can bring your own lunch, that kind of thing.
Right.
So we have to, ideally, we would ask the client first, like, what are some things that you could do?
Right, yeah.
Because everybody knows, even if you don't want to admit it, you could make a plan for yourself.
Yeah, well, it's always good when people come up with those own decisions, and then you just help, validate that and like, oh, that's perfect, excellent, and that's basically really what I did with her as well.
Exactly, because you're a pro.
Well, I'm not a pro, but
so step 4 is the motivation phase or supportive phase, which I am a huge fan of because I'm basically a walking cheerleader. But I never did cheer except for 8th grade. It was ugly.
That's surprising. You should.
I was a mascot for
you always
year.
cheerleading my singing. Which,
I do.
Makes me almost quit like 3 or 4 times just to take that as a career, but
because you could have. It would have been really good.
It is beautiful. It is beautiful.
But that motivational stage, supportive stage, is where the trainer and the client actually come up with a plan together. So like maybe they planned on working 3 times a week, but as you go through all of this, you're like, well, maybe let's start at 2 days a week so we can create that sense of success and create a base of a habit and that kind of thing. And that 3rd day will be kind of like a bonus.
Right.
If we get to it, we get to it.
Yeah.
Awesome. But if not, so that's the stage where it becomes like on us to use our expertise to be like, okay, so this is how we need to move forward and how our programming is going to look and how all this exercise choices and that kind of thing, so that we can create a sense of enjoyment, because that's why people quit, right? Is because they're not enjoying it.
Yeah, it's a big part of it. Right?
Yeah, it's one of the parts. There's a whole bunch of reasons, but and creating an atmosphere where they don't feel like they're getting judged if they don't make it in.
Right.
So that kind of stuff. But then it's also on the client to be like, okay, this is the plan that we made. I'm going to follow through with my part. Trainer's going to follow through with their part. We're going to be a team.
There's expectations.
Yeah.
There's buy-in. You guys collaborate on this together, which we talk about a lot, is really huge. And we sometimes don't see that, right? And when people tell you, okay, these are your barriers and these are the things that you're going to do for it, it's like sometimes that doesn't really work very well.
Right.
But it's like, here's the things that you discovered, and these are the things. That's why, like, even when I do weigh-ins and people don't see the progress, I'll say, why do you feel like you didn't get progress? And like they tell me, I'm like, awesome. Now we know what the situation is. What are we going to do to find it? Well, I know I need to start meal prepping. Awesome, cool. So how are we going to do that?
Setting like itty bitty little goals to get there.
Okay, how about we start meal prepping on Sunday, just lunches?
Yeah, just lunches. It doesn't have to be like a whole life changing, like I'm going to give up all the alcohol and I'm going to meal prep 3 meals a week, a day. Nobody does that. Alcohol is great. I get that. But
some of our clients like,
we don't.
It's healthy living Wichita.
Drinking water. It's always water. But
understand, you don't have to go crazy and give up everything.
It's not
in
an
life.
all or nothing situation.
Small things, yeah.
Right. And so that's where we as trainers get to be like, hey, you got this, and you get to be like, this is why I hired you. So I thought that was a really cool class, because it kind of teaches us how to be more of a team and less of a do it this way.
Right.
And
we're not manipulating our clients into doing things, and they shouldn't manipulate us. And there's conversation, buy-in, and like you said, and ownership. And ownership. And I think you hit the nail on the head. One, expectations. I think that's a huge thing in clients being assertive. But I think one thing you said is like showing that you care more about just like how many sessions you're doing, that you actually care about the person and really what's going on, and trying to figure out those things, which is I think way more in depth and important. And like you said, you're hiring more than just somebody to like have a program. You're hiring a coach,
right?
And almost not like really a life coach, because we're not psychologists and we're not trying to solve everything else. We're just trying to figure out how to make you healthier and happier in this aspect. But you're working through those things, and that's huge.
Yeah, and that was like the second half of the class, because this was like the first 30 minutes and they were hour and a half long sessions.
That's
but
awesome.
It was a lot, and it was really, really cool. And it was just talking about like supporting them, not even that they necessarily expect you to solve anything, but just having somebody to listen, because maybe the people in their lives always try and fix stuff,
right? And
we're just like here to listen and count your reps sometimes.
Yeah, I think sometimes just understanding and being able to listen to people is huge. Some people just need to just express the situation.
Yep.
And you just need to listen and shake your head and understand.
Like, I get that. I understand. Right. I hear you.
Right.
And that's all they need, which is pretty cool. So that's stuff that I think we could probably start trying to implement in our like assessments or just in conversation. It would be kind of hard to do in like a group session.
Right.
But I mean, people talk to, in like our small groups and stuff. That'd be easy and maybe less intimidating to have a conversation as like a group.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe. But
I think we do some good things in assessment, like asking, what are potential barriers and how do you feel about the workout program, and those things probably all kind of help start to pull out things more. But I think you said feedback is over like the last 20 years of training, I think, is one of the biggest things we can. Feedback and expectations, I think those are both huge. And so if we can figure those out and get more feedback and ask more questions and know where somebody's at, because I will admit, in the beginning I created a program, I took people through it, I never really asked them too much outside of that, and it was just like, oh, all right, bye. And I found out that that's a recipe for not success.
Right. And being able to ask good questions, like the right questions, because maybe somebody wants to lose weight, but if you say why, then they'll be like, because my doctor told me to. But why? It's like, well, because my blood pressure's high. But why is your blood pressure high? And it might actually like work out to be that they're super stressed out from all of their obligations because they have a hard time saying no and stuff, and you work through that by being a 2-year-old and being like, but why? But why? Why? And it actually can work kind of really cool. So I thought that was really interesting, and I plan on
The therapy approach is what they call it. Yeah.
just a little head tilt, but why? And why do you feel that way? So yeah, that's pretty much what I have.
They work out. They do the same thing in like teaching. Instead of like you just always ask why you never really teach. You're just like, oh, so why do you feel like this is
The right answer, or whatever.
Right answer. Yeah.
Defend your answers, but yeah.
No, I think that's very, very powerful. I think that's a lot of things that people can use, and I think people can utilize some of this stuff on themselves. But obviously, you can see where the benefit of having coaches, because sometimes we don't even have, or like I said, we have our own self-talk and our own rationalization, and not really that unless you talk them out and really figure out really why is your barriers, what's happening, is it something that is controllable or uncontrollable, and you don't really sometimes always know that because you just tell yourself this is an uncontrollable barrier, or this is something I can't get around. But if you actually like talk through those aspects, you're like, well, I do have these things, or maybe this is just rationalization and I'm not being real with myself. And,
being honest with yourself is hard.
It's very hard. I had that same thing, just self-talk, same kind of conversation with this morning, just saying that, she was talking about likes a snack at night. And I was like, sometimes I have to have that conversation, like before I go eat, I'm like, do you really need to eat ramen?
Yeah.
And there's even a study of showing that people that was binge eating, that there's kind of cues, and people sometimes know they start to get that feeling that they're going to binge eat. And they had people just say out loud, I'm about to binge eat. Just say that verbally out loud, which I don't think people should go around and say, I'm about to binge eat. But
maybe not in public, but at home.
But it was amazing that in that study, the people that did that actually binged eat less, just because they basically told themselves and had that verbal cue and was able not to. So they actually binged eat less just by admitting to themselves out loud that they're about to binge eat. So it's kind of a weird concept. But
that's kind of cool, though.
There's lots of I think they probably have thought that, but really, didn't really go into their head too much. It's probably over on the deal. So,
yep.
Anyways, do you have anything else that you want to wrap up?
I don't. So I guess my wrap up would be to be willing to talk to your trainers, and trainers be willing to listen. And I think teamwork is what will be the most.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
It does. It makes the scale move.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's a collaborated thing between the both of us. We both have the same goals for you. Our goals might be a little bit different because we can't obviously internalize exactly how somebody feels, but we want to. Mm-hmm. We want to understand those situations and be empathetic and help you learn and master and move through these different aspects. And that's really what a coach is somebody that's going to support you through that in some way, in some fashion, and try to figure that out together. And I think that's huge, and really why personal trainers can be amazing, and that's really, really good aspects of them. But I think even on yourself, even if you don't have a coach, because I always like to try to provide and not expect everybody to hire a personal trainer.
Sure.
A lot of these things you can probably think of yourself, or find somebody that can help you out through those as well.
Write it out, maybe. See it from a different point of view.
But, of course, we're always here for you. You can always ask questions. Obviously, as you've seen, Jelly is extremely knowledgeable. So if you want to put some questions in the comments and all that stuff and all this fun stuff, I think she would be more than happy to probably help answer those. So happy. So happy. Well, thank you. Always a pleasure. I learned so much from you. It's amazing 20 years in the business and still be able to learn from so many other people. It's an awesome aspect. So ever revolving and keep going. Okay. Bye.
Bye, hopefully.
See ya. Thank you for listening to the Healthy Living Wichita podcast with Go Time Training. If you enjoyed today's show and want to get started with your own fitness journey, I'd love to help kickstart your goals. How do 4 60-minute personal training sessions for $99 with me sound? Head over to www.gotimetraining.com/podcast to claim yours. I can't wait to meet you.